Well, good evening and welcome to the 2022 Richland 2 School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Patrick Kelly. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs for Palmetto State Teachers Association, and I've been teaching in Richland 2 for the last 18 years at Blythewood High School and still do so every morning. I'm also a past chair of the Richland 2 Teacher Forum. Tonight's event is a joint effort between the League of Women Voters and the Richland 2 Teacher Forum. The Teacher Forum is comprised of the past 3 years of school-level Teachers of the Year in the district and has a mission of, quote, providing representation of teacher opinions about the teaching profession and educational issues and to impact the professional development of teachers in Richland 2. The forum is proud to once again partner with the League of Women's Voters to provide this important avenue to help our community members get to know the candidates for our school board. The questions for tonight's event were compiled and selected by members of the Teacher Forum. The questions have not been shared with candidates in advance. There will be no questions from the audience tonight. In order to ensure that all candidates are treated fairly and are not interrupted, we ask that audience members silence your cell phones. Please refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate. Tonight's event is a forum, not a debate. As a result, we want to remind the candidates participating that this is a forum that provides an opportunity to share your platform, but it's not an environment for questions between and direct debate among the candidates. Instead, each question will be posed by me as the moderator, and each candidate will be given an equal opportunity to respond. The forum will include 3 segments. In the first segment, each candidate will have 1 minute for introductory remarks. The order for the introductions, questions, responses, and closings will be determined by random drawings throughout the evening. A name will be drawn to identify the first candidate to speak or respond. After that, the candidate to the left of the first speaker will speak second, and so on until all candidates have spoken on either opening or closing remarks or in response to a question. Once a candidate's name has been drawn, it will not be included in subsequent drawings to go first for a segment. A representative from the Columbia League of Women's Voters is here tonight serving as timekeeper. Each candidate will be given notice of a 1-minute warning with a green sign, 30 seconds remaining with the white sign, 15 seconds with the yellow sign, and then the red sign means stop, at which time the candidates will need to conclude their thoughts and their statement. If they continue far beyond the time limit, I will ask them to finish. When you see the red sign, please simply conclude the sentence or thought that you're on, and then we need to move to the next candidate to give everyone an equal opportunity to be heard. If a candidate proceeds past the conclusion of a thought or statement, the candidate's microphone will be muted to ensure we're able to provide everyone with equal time. After introductory remarks, I will ask the candidates a series of 4 questions. Again, the order of response to each question will be randomly selected by drawing a name, and each candidate will receive an equal chance to respond in 2 minutes. Finally, we will transition to a period of allowing candidates 1 minute for closing remarks, with the order of presentation again determined by random draw with an eye toward concluding the forum around 8:30 p.m. All candidates running for the Richland 2 School Board were invited to participate this evening, and the candidates that you will hear from tonight are those that accepted the invitation. Joining us tonight in alphabetical order are Dr. Teresa Holmes, Mr. James Mobler, Mr. Mcgee Moody, Mrs. Angela Nash, Ms. Nikki Porter, Mr. Darrell D.S. President, Mr. Eric Ravelli, Mr. Larry J. Smalls, Mr. Terrence E. Staley, Mr. Joe Trapp, Ms. Tanika Schuler-Washington, and Ms. Marianne Wright. We will now turn to opening statements, and our first candidate to speak will be chosen by drawing by Ms. Perkins, this year's Condor Elementary Teacher of the Year. Thank you, Ms. Perkins. So our first opening statement tonight will come from Mr. Joe Trapp. After Mr. Trapp's 1 minute has concluded, we'll move to Ms. Washington, to Ms. Wright, and then we'll jump back down the table to Dr. Holmes. So Mr. Trapp, when you're ready, you have 1 minute for opening statement.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Joe Trapp. I've been a resident of Richland County my entire life. I have lived the last 50 years in Blythewood, and I have a daughter that just graduated from high school and is now started USC as a student there. I've always been interested in everything in Richland 2. I do a lot of work in Richland 2. I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed the last 20 years. I've been in construction for 35 years. It is my greatest desire to see the students and the families of Richland School District 2 to succeed in everything that they try in life, to have good careers, to have good families. I believe that my years of experience in the industry and work, as well as a small business owner, puts me in a position to where I think my unique skills and life experiences will make me an asset to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trapp. Right on time. That was excellent. Ms. Tamika Schuler-Washington, you're up next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamika Schuler-Washington, and I hail from this premier district as a Richland 2 graduate. I am a 13-year educator with classroom experience, mentoring new teachers, as well as working in district leadership. I am running for Richland 2 School Board because I am ready, just like the other candidates, to take action for this school district. I want to see accountability on all levels. I want children and parents to know that they are first and foremost the most important reason why we operate and exist in the school district. And talent, just as the district has a goal of meeting and proceeding with talent, talent is very important. The teachers, the substitutes, the classroom assistants, the transportation, all of those are vital to the growth and the development of this premier district.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wright.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ann Wright, and I am a product of Georgetown County Public Schools. So I'm a Geechee Gullah girl from the Low Country. I received my undergraduate degree in biology from the University of South Carolina and a master's in education from the Citadel. I became a science teacher and taught for 29 years before retiring and returning to South Carolina in 2010. As a teacher, I was honored with many awards and acknowledgments, but none so dear as District Teacher of the Year. I'm a mother to Nicole and Nicholas, who is, by the way, a 2014 graduate of Richland 2. I've always been active in service-oriented activities. I serve as the social justice chair at my church. I also serve on the board of directors for More Justice and also for LORADAC. Throughout my adult life, I have been involved in activities that make other people's lives a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wright. Moving to the other end of the table, Dr. Holmes.
Good evening. I probably don't need this microphone, but my name is Dr. Teresa Holmes, and I'm a 35-year educator. I started off as a teacher, guidance counselor, guidance director, administrator, college professor, cheerleading coach, adjunct professor. I've done everything that you can possibly do in a school. I have served 4 years on this board, and I've served as chair of this board, vice chair, and currently secretary, all within the 4 years. I took the chairmanship during a time when it was most difficult, but I am not afraid to lead because you cannot lead with Kool-Aid in your blood, and I don't have that. I am here for the students because that's what it's all about, and I'm here for the teachers, the faculty, and the staff, and my record proves that in my voting. I've also made sure that our teachers have had what they need, our staff has had what they need, raises, and I will continue to do that. But the most important thing for me is that we understand that I want to represent all students. All students, no matter what, deserve to be represented.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mobley.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and Richland District 2's teachers for hosting this informative discussion. For those of you who don't know me, I am James Mobler, and I'm excited to be running for Richland District 2 School Board. I worked in a service-oriented industry for many years. I am able to interact with people from various walks of life. I was employed with District 2 for over 15 years. I have been a resident of District 2 for over 30 years and have had 2 sons and 3 grandchildren graduate from the district. I am a dedicated, compassionate, detail-oriented leader. Together we can tackle the quality of education, equity, school safety, and fiscal challenges while representing diverse interests. As a dedicated school bus driver, support staff employee, I was the first to greet students in the morning before school and the last to ensure they arrived home early. I want to represent certified staff as well as classified staff members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moody.
Hi, my name is Mcgee Moody. Moved to Richland County in 2007. Kind of came here for a unique reason. We moved here. I was the head swimming coach at the University of South Carolina. My wife was a teacher, so when we moved here, immediately she started looking at what school district we needed to jump into for my 4 daughters. 3 at the time when we moved, 4 now. All 4 of my daughters went through the Richland 2 school district, and my wife told me immediately when we moved here, she said, this is where we need to be. This is the school district where our girls need to get their education. So for the next 15 years after that, I worked as the head swimming coach at the University of South Carolina, retired in 2021 from coaching, and entered into finance. I felt it followed one of my strengths, which was strategy and planning and having the opportunity to work with people. So having a background of education where my mother and my wife, both in education, is something that's very important to me, and I look forward to the opportunity to work on the board.
Thank you very much. Ms. Nash.
Hi there, I'm Angela Nash, and I have the distinct pleasure of being a realtor here in Columbia and moving people in and around the district. And I did not have running for school board on my bingo card for 2022, but over the last 2 years, I've had conversations with teachers, parents, and students, and what I found was that they felt that they weren't being heard. And I think that sometimes that's communication, sometimes that's relational, but one of the things that I get to do as a realtor is be a bridge builder. I get to build relationships, but I also need a little bit of business acumen to make sure my business doesn't fall apart. And so when I talk about and think about what my field of play is, or what they call creative genius, I would say is being a bridge builder, being a communicator, and being someone who's going to advocate for the parents, students, and teachers that are in this district. So I hope tonight that you guys get to learn more about me, and I get to learn a little bit more about you after this is all over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Porter.
Hi, my name is Nikki Porter. I am a result of Richland 2 schools and also a strong military family. I am mom of 2 boys that are currently students in Richland 2. Very proud mom. And I made the decision to run because this district made a huge impact on my life, and lots of leaders within this district were people that I look up to and were mentors of mine, and I'm extremely thankful. I want to give back to our community, and not only that, I think one of my biggest strengths is that I have a fresh perspective, being fresh out of the classroom in 2021. I've taught for over 14 years in this district, and I think my perspective of having a teacher's voice and being a parent's choice as a strong teacher leader within our schools will help our board, strengthen our board, and also represent you best.
Thank you very much. Mr. President.
Good evening. My name is Darrell President, and yes, President is my last name. I'm running for Richland 2 School Board because I want to be a voice for everyone. I want to represent not only the students, but serve in support of the parents, teachers, and the staff. I want them to know that they should be safe, secure, and supportive. In order to convey this message and to make all involved feel safe, secure, and supportive, my approach is to provide suggestions, solutions for improving the safety and security of school. And when it comes to gun violence and other types of violence, and to support teachers and staff in their quest to obtain higher wages and incentive pay. I also hope to aid in the improvement of policy and procedures that will help decrease absenteeism and will increase respectful, and confidential dialogue between students who seek to help their mental health issues within the district. I'm a father of 2 graduates of this district, a husband of 28 years to my wife, pastor of 21 years, and a small business owner, 15 years in this community.
Thank you, Mr. President, which is a government teacher. I always wanted to say that. Just as a reminder to the audience, if you could, please mute cell phones so that the candidates can focus on their remarks. Next up, Mr. Ravelli.
Yes, thank you. My name is Eric Ravelli. My family and I moved to Blythewood about 10 years ago. I took a position with the pension fund here, and my position with them is I'm head of real assets. Basically, I oversee a portfolio getting close to about $6 billion, It's invested globally in real estate and infrastructure. Outside of that, well, first of all, I'm married, 33 years. I have 3 young adult children. They all graduated from USC. And 30 seconds. And then outside of that, I play baseball, manage, and I'm also on the board of the Adult Baseball League here. I like to bake, and finally I do Commando Krav Maga. So that's me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smalls.
Good evening. My name is Larry Smalls, and hopefully I will not be killing any of you tonight. I don't know if that's a reference from The Sandlot, if you're killing me, Smalls. But nevertheless, I have been in Richland District 2 for roughly 30 years. I have 2 kids that are attending District 2, a beautiful wife for 28 years. I've been in bank and finance for over 20 years, and I've also from Chucktown, Charleston, South Carolina, so if the gullah does come out, please do forgive me. We'll have somebody to translate for you. But nevertheless, the reason why I'm here is primarily for parental rights. All of you, just like myself, have kids in this district. And it's critically important that we try to strive to ensure that every kid, every child gets an education. And one of my focus here for being a candidate for District 2 is to bring about transparency, to bring about integrity and financial integrity to our district so that our kids can be the best that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least for our opening statements, Mr. Staley.
Yes, my name is Terence Staley, and I bring, for 1 minute, I just want to first thank God for the opportunity to be here. I spent over 28 years in the military, the last assignment working strategically up at the National Guard Bureau, part of Homeland Security. What I want to talk a little bit about and bring to the attention is first and foremost, in 2004 to 2009, I was recruited by a senator to run an after-school program called the About Face. This is a national program funded by Congress. At the end of 5 years, I made that program the #1 program in the state. It was for high-risk kids in Richland 1 school district. I went from $286,000 budget to over $1 million, but the superintendent put it throughout every school in Richland 1, and I started to put it in a couple of schools in Richland 2. And saying that is I have a tremendous amount of experience, organization, decision-making, problem-solving, and executive reorganization and structure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our opening statements, and we'll now turn to our questions. Again, we have 4 questions that have been comprised by the teacher forum, and were selected by teachers serving on the teacher forum. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to respond to the question. And as a reminder, the league is providing timers, as you've all seen during opening statements. And our order of speaker will again be selected by Ms. Perkins by draw. So Ms. Perkins, if you could draw out our next name for us. Thank you very much. So first question is going to go to Mr. Moody, and then we'll work to his left to Ms. Nash and down the line. I will repeat the question for each candidate before you go, so if you're 10th in line, you don't have to remember the wording of the question. You're going to hear it fresh before you go. But our first question, starting with Mr. Moody, is if you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools? So one more time so all candidates can hear it. If you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools? Starting with you, Mr. Moody, when you're ready.
I believe that probably my top priority would be to try to get control of the current teacher-staff situation. We have kind of a situation in our country right now where teachers, staff members, they're leaving the industry at a higher rate than at any other point in history. And I think what we have to do, if you look, not only do we have kind of a perfect storm coming up, but we have a lot of teachers coming up in Richland too that are coming up on a 28-year point in their career. And because of that, beyond that 28 years, there's not a whole lot of reason for them to continue moving forward. And many of them are stepping away from the profession. You couple that with 2% of college graduates right now are going into education. We have to increase our number of students that are going into the teaching field. We have to do something to encourage our veteran teachers to stay involved. And because when you lose that mentorship program, when a new teacher comes in, if there is no one there with experience, they're going to be wondering lost for the first few years of their career and become so frustrated. We have to create an environment where teachers are valued. Right now, I think teachers are working, and this is a problem throughout the industry. Teachers are working, and they're overworked, and they're overstressed, and they're stretched too thin. We have to create value for them so they understand that we give them the time that they need, the time to recharge their batteries, the time to be able to get themselves ready to move back into the classroom and educate our children. But making sure that our teachers are, one, entering the industry and remaining in the industry is a top priority to me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Nash, the question is, if you're elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
So one of the things I believe that you do when you start thinking about doing something like this is you kind of go on a fact-finding mission and find out what's the most important thing to the people that you're serving. And what I found was safety was one of the top things that people were really concerned about. And when you have something like that, safety can cover a myriad of things. So looking at from a standpoint of from outside of the classroom to the building, and then going inside to the classrooms, disciplinary, all of those things are going to be part of what safety looks like. So I began talking to people who actually know about safety, because I think that's how we're going to do this thing, is being able to talk to people in the community who know best about what that looks like. So those are things like after school programs to help with disciplinary actions. So those things, our kids are going to these schools and they're being bullied and they're not knowing how to handle the things that life is throwing at them. So after school programs have proven to be something that has helped them in many ways. And those leaders are willing to come on alongside the community and come alongside Richland too and be a part of helping make those children's lives a lot better. When we talk about safety on the outside, not just involving Richland County, there are some really smart people in our community who do safety, and talking to them about where we're vulnerable as far as the building is concerned is something that we definitely should be doing. So as far as going and talking to the community, I can already tell you I've already talked to many people who are willing to come alongside us at Richland 2 and begin the work to make sure that we have a safe classrooms, we have a healthier environment in our classrooms, and our building is safe as well.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Porter, again, the question is, if you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
Yes, my top priority would be thriving students. If our students aren't thriving, then we're not doing our job. So I want to make sure that everything is in place so that those students can thrive. We need to reevaluate some of our resources. There are some resources that we have that have been in place over 20 years, and we just need to make sure that they're making the gains that we had hoped that they made back then. So definitely reevaluating resources and looking at where we stand as a district currently, so that we can have these thriving students. I want to look at our guidance department, especially in elementary education. I want to talk about with other guidance counselors and get their voices and their input about what they need to be able to support these students who have just gone through the pandemic. We have lasting effects of this pandemic, and we see it showing up in our middle schools and our high schools. So I think it's very important that we start in elementary, making sure that they have all the resources that they need to handle the issues that we're currently in. I want to look at special education as well. Special education and the resources that we have. Do they need more? What's changed and over the course of time? And then with that, we need to make sure that we have enough staff. With the teacher shortage right now, our classrooms are growing. Right now we have a cap at our magnet schools, and I'm afraid that if we continue at the rate that we're going, we're not going to be able to keep that cap at magnet schools, which makes them special with them being smaller student to teacher ratios. Well, that's going to grow in magnet schools and in our other classrooms as well. So we need to go ahead and ensure that we're listening to our teachers, we're supporting them so that they want to stay in our district. By doing that, we're going to be great role models for them. My perspective as a teacher, I can tell you that pay is not enough. You're going to have to go deeper than pay and make sure that our culture is in the right place. They're watching us at all times, and if we're not welcoming to them, they're going to leave. I was one of them, unfortunately, but I'm back here because I want to give back and give you my firsthand experience with what took place during the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. President, the question is, if you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
My top priority, first and foremost, is security. If the school is not safe, it's very difficult to be educated in the school. There should not be a scenario where the school is not 100% safe for students, teachers, and faculty. And in order for that to happen, we have to be creative in how we look at the school. School should not be a soft target. It should not be the first place a person who wants to shoot at goes. It should be the last place. And we have to ensure that there's not enough money allocated for security, but we need to make sure that we get all the funds necessary so that we can do that. Because God forbid something happens and we then say we should have done something. Well, we have to do it in the first part. The other part of that question is how do you get involved with the people, the community? Well, you have to let the community know everything up front. They need to be fully aware of what is going on. They don't need to guess about what you're doing with respect to school. They don't need to have to figure out if you're doing anything. They need to be fully aware so that there is no confusion and there's no misunderstanding among people. When you don't tell people things, that's when they start coming up with their own ideas of what it is that you're doing. If you fully involve people from the beginning to the end, then we have no misunderstandings, and it becomes a lot easier to then function. And I think the reality of it is that people want information, and the fact that they don't get it is why they have the problems they have. If the board or the school district involves the community in every aspect, every factor of security, I think we wouldn't have any problems. It would be a lot easier to get through what we need done. And that's pretty much that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ravelli, moving to you, the question is, if you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
Okay, thank you. Well, I have multiple priorities, but I guess if I was going to have to pick one, I do really want to see classical education come back into our schools. You hear about that in our charter schools and our private schools. I really see no reason, other than maybe some structural reasons, why we couldn't do that in our public schools. Now, I have received some feedback that that's not necessarily going to be just at the Richland 2 district level. That may have to go up through the Board of Education and maybe the South Carolina Superintendent. I understand that. But that's what I want to see. I want to see our children know what character is, what virtue is. I want to see civics come back into our schools. I think being a citizen of this country requires that we understand how this country works, how our constitutional republic works, and I think that's very important for our youngsters to do that. And, I see that there's ways that you can do that in classical education, but definitely the K through probably 5th grade, that's when kids really want to learn. And that's where you got to teach them the fundamentals. And then as they move into middle school, you start to be able to utilize those skills and understand and start to analyze and so forth. And then finally, when you get into high school, you actually apply those skills. And so I think that's very important for our kids as they graduate to understand and really have character and be ready to go out into the workforce and into the world in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smalls, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
That's a very good question. Maybe I'm biased, but one of the most important things to me is parental rights and allowing the parents the opportunity to provide the best interest regarding their kids' education as well as their well-being. One of the things that I have been doing really since 2016 has been attending the board meetings, looking out for the best interest of the 2 kids that I have in this district. As a parent, no one in this room, outside of my wife and myself, knows what's best for our kids. The district's concern cannot go beyond mine. And one of the things that I think that is very important is that as a district, we allow the parents to choose and to make the best decisions regarding their kids' well-being. And that's so critically important. I've been attending school boards, again, since 2016, even up until this day. My goal is to seek out the best interests for the parents as well as the children. One of the things I also wanted to improve on is open lines of communication. I think in order for any group or organization to accomplish a task, they first have to open up lines of communication. There has to be a collaborative effort, which is based on trust, in order for any endeavor to be accomplished, or in order for the district to succeed and be the best district it can possibly be. And I think over the past years, we've been seeing that the board has only made decisions simply based on certain interest groups. My concern is to bring the parents as well as teachers, so that teachers are not intimidated to go up and ask questions or address issues. See, parents, teachers are the grassroots of this district regarding addressing any problems. We can put money in safety, we can put money in any endeavor, but if there's no open lines of communication, if there's no collaborative effort between the parents, teachers, and the district, we will be futile in our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Staley, the question is, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
Okay, again, it's a good topic. First of all, let me reiterate what I did for over a decade at the strategic level. I was responsible for the security of the United States, 54 states and territories. Now I'm coming down micro level to where we are now. The first thing I would think about and focus on is student security, teacher security, and staff. Those three things have to be accomplished. That child, when it leaves home in the morning, should feel safe enough to leave that home and get to a school and feel confident that they can learn and not worry about what's going to happen on that school ground or within that school. Same with the teachers. The teacher has to feel confident that they can sit and teach. Not discipline, but teach. And the staff, pretty much the same. You have to have stakeholders' equity in this. Everybody's got to be part of it. The community, faith, family, community. That's critical. Faith, family, and community. You've got to be able to negotiate and come together. There's courses that can be taken that's not expensive. As a matter of fact, they're free. They're called CBTs, computer-based training. I'm certified as an ICS, Incident Command System. I'm also certified as a National Incident Management System. Those courses I took through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're very good courses. Active shooter, all the things that parents, students, teachers, and staff can get on a computer, sign up, and take the course. They're not that long, and get a certificate. It is so critical. Students, teachers, staff, they have to feel comfortable in a setting every day they go to that school. Not to break up fights, not to go out and see blood on table counters or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Trapp, the question is, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority, and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
I think first off, if you'd asked me this 2 weeks ago, it'd be a different answer than it is tonight. As I learned things, my priorities changed a little bit. This past Thursday night, I was at a ball game at Blythewood High School, and I had a parent talk to me, and it was a real sobering conversation. He was very concerned about the safety of his children that were attending that high school, as well as other district schools. And we can't have our parents this concerned about safety and not address something on safety. A couple of weeks ago, I was working at a high school repairing a gas line, and I went through a door to get to my work truck, and the door did not shut behind me. The springs that should have pulled the door shut did not. It had to be physically pushed shut. And I realized, this is a serious deal. It's a little thing, but it could have great consequences. And of course, let security know about that. But it's the little things like that these things shouldn't happen. Maintenance and things like that should take place so that if a door isn't shut good, it should be fixed. Another thing that I think would help with this, as well as help with community involvement, is transparency. I think a lot of times, about a year ago, I decided to seek this position, and I've tried to find a lot of things out, and it is very difficult to find things out from the school district, especially if it's something that isn't something they want to talk about. And I think safety is something that we often don't want to talk about because it'll take some tough decisions to get it where it needs to be. As far as community involvement, there's two things that I have really recommended to everybody a lot lately. One is substitute teaching. It's an opportunity for anybody with a high school diploma to get into the schools and help bring order and education into these children's lives. It's something that's easy to do. And I don't know what kind of volunteer positions we have, but we've got to get to a point where parents and community members can do more volunteering and be in the schools more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turning to Ms. Washington, your question is, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
So one of the things that's important is teacher shortages, and not just teacher shortages, but shortages across the board. So I come from a corporate background, and I went into an alternative program. Why? Because teacher shortages. This has been a conversation that has been long going on in our nation and in our state. And so how do we address it? We look at opportunities for internal pipelines, where if we have people who have 4-year degrees, how can we help them get the necessary education in order to fill some of the positions if they're interested in classroom teaching? So we have a lot of money that's spent on recruitment and recruitment, but we have to also spend a lot of that money on teacher retention and on staff retention. In corporate America, understand that conversations are happening about how do we retain our employees. So a lot of money is spent on employee development. And it's not just always professional development on how to do your job better, but it's also mental health. It's also supporting moms when they're new moms and they may have to leave for doctor's appointments and not making them feel bad. Because just as Mr. Staley said, faith, family, and freedom are also important to me as well as a parent and as a business owner. And so we have to think about conversations. Do we have partnerships within our school district, but also externally to where we can support our employees across the board? Are we also looking at corporations and how they are retaining employees and looking at what structures do they have in place? Because the same thing applies in education. We're talking about humans who are in the classrooms, who are on our buses, who are frontline people. And when we have these conversations, it opens up the door to talk about transparency with how we're spending money. And it also opens up the door to talk about how we are having these conversations and inviting the right people to the table.
Thank you very much. And transitioning to Ms. Wright, if you are elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
My top priority would be that of improving student achievement. Our parents in our district, they want to make sure that we're preparing their children for the real world, whether that be college beyond high school, the military, or the workforce. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we know that good instruction is the life's blood of student achievement. So in order to provide our children with good instruction, we must provide them with the best qualified teachers. So with the teacher shortage that's been talked about already, when we look at what we need to do in order to provide our children with the best qualified teachers, we need to be more creative and innovative in how we go about doing that. For example, I read a couple of weeks ago about a wonderful program that's going on at Columbia College, and the participants need to have a 4-year degree, and they can become teachers through the apprenticeship program. While we have teachers already with us, we need to be more supportive when it comes to discipline. Take a new teacher and team that new teacher up with a seasoned teacher, someone who is really good at what they do, and make that teacher a coach. Within your own school, you can have professional development going on within your staff where everyone feels like they're valued and they have something to offer. The new teachers feel like someone cares. They can go to someone like the principal or a coach and talk about what issues and problems they're having. We need to support teachers so that they stay in the classroom and they don't leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving back to the other end of the table with Dr. Holmes, your question is, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
One of the main things that I think is important is mental health. We know that after COVID, we have had several situations that have occurred in the classroom and throughout this nation because of mental health. So one program that I'd like to see them bring to our school district would be having the actual mental health counselors situated at the school via TV or via computer. That way the students do not have to leave the classroom, they do not have to leave school. And then also, as a former guidance counselor, I do know that a guidance counselor is not a mental health counselor. So we can't lay that at their feet. We need to make sure we have the appropriate people in line to issue those kind of mental services. Not only if we do that, if we bring those kind of mental health services to the classroom, we will also bring down the discipline problems that we are seeing within the schools. And then I'm going to jump to the other thing that's important too. Compensation for salaries and teachers. I was a teacher that spent 35 years, and I taught and I did everything for 35 years. So after 28 years, your salary does stop. One thing I'd like to make sure that we do is that, I've asked them already to do a salary schedule and figure out ways that we can maybe move that, because there's no incentive for being a teacher after 28 years. That's the one thing. And let me jump on to safety real quick because my time is running out. Safety is important. And transparency and safety is very important. That's why we did a detailed salary study. We have come up with we're going to put metal detectors, and we're doing that in the classroom, in the schools right now as we speak. And one thing that we also asked at the last meeting was that we make sure that the parents knew, and I asked this specifically, that we put this on the web page, because I wanted all the parents to see exactly in detail what the plan was for their child's safety. We want to make sure that the school district is keeping your children safe. We want to make sure that teachers, you're satisfied and want to stay. We've already given salary raises under our leadership for everybody that's in the district, and they're telling me to stop, but I have lots more to say. Thank you.
Fortunately, we have 3 more rounds of questions. And last question for the first round, Mr. Mobley, wrap us up. The question is, if elected to the school board, what would be your top priority and how will you encourage community support for our schools?
I would say the top priority for me would be improved school safety. Next thing would be just be a good listener. Listening to the parents, the community, and the teachers. People on the front lines that look after our children every day. That's it.
Thank you, sir. We will now transition to our next round of questions. So I need Ms. Perkins, if she would assist one more time with drawing a name. Thank you very much. And this time we will start right here beside me with Ms. Wright and then move to the end of the table with Dr. Holmes. So our next question for the next round of questions is, and again, candidates did not have these questions in advance, which you'll see echoed because some of them have identified this particular question in their top priority. The question is, knowing that we continue to be in an educator shortage crisis in South Carolina, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland II to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students? So one more time, knowing that we're in an educator shortage crisis in South Carolina, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland II to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students? Ms. Wright, we'll begin with you.
As I said earlier, we as a district need to come up with more creative and innovative ways to recruit and retain our teachers. I mentioned that there's a program at Columbia College where an individual only needs to have a bachelor's degree, and they take them through the process so they become a certified teacher at the end. That is something our district could do, develop relationships, not only with Columbia College, but with all the other colleges of education in the area, so that we have a direct line to their teachers. I also think it's important for us not to wait until the springtime or at the end of the summer and we realize that we have a shortage, but to actually start to recruit teachers all year long. There are people who graduate in December. We should be looking at those people then, collecting applications all year round and looking through those applications and weeding out the ones that look promising from the ones that don't. Those are simple things that we can do to have a cadre of teachers that we can choose from. What we need to do as far as retaining teachers, give teachers more authority over what they're doing in their classroom. Again, make sure that you team up a seasoned teacher with a novice teacher. That's a win-win. One can learn from the other. I also think it's important too that we have just not a new teacher orientation at the beginning of the school year, but that we meet periodically all throughout the year. The principal should have an open door policy. So if a new teacher is coming in with a problem, there should be some way to address that issue with the principal. He is the leader of that school and should be able to, or he or she should be able to give some advice and support to the novice teachers. I also think that it's important too that we look at some type of incentive, perhaps help with student loans or signing bonus, something of that nature as well, to encourage teachers to come to our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to the other end of the table, Dr. Holmes, knowing that we continue to be in an educator shortage crisis in South Carolina, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland II to recruit and retain the best talent to work with students?
I think that we need to continue doing teacher bonuses, and also we need to go, as I said earlier, and we've asked them to already start doing this, restudy the salary schedule. 28 years, after working for 28 years, there is no incentive to keep going, and you're too young to really retire after 28 years. So we have to really look at that salary schedule and adjust that, and the districts can do that within themselves. The other thing that I would say for retention of teachers would be, also I agree that we cannot leave our new teachers just flying in the wind. We have to make sure they are paired with experienced teachers to help move them through the system so they don't feel frustrated and want to give up easy. The other thing that I'd like to see happen would be go back to the program where we gave back tuition reimbursement, because there's no other profession that you have to keep getting a higher degree for to get more money, and that's with teaching, but you have to pay for it yourself. If you were in the corporate world, the company would pay for you to get a higher education and your salary would increase. But that's not so with education. I have a doctorate, but I also have a big bill for the doctorate. And so we need to start looking at that if you want people to come to this profession, you have to make it attractive on all levels, especially financial, because everyone deserves to not have to work 2 and 3 jobs after teaching all day long. So that's some things that we need to look at. We also need to make sure that our veteran teachers are taken care of, and because we always focus on our new ones. And we need to focus on the new ones, but veteran teachers, y'all need love too. Because if you've stuck in there for all these years, you deserve credit for everything that you've been doing. And there has to be more incentives for you to continue to stay. Lastly, I'd also like for us to make sure that, again, our salary schedule is not lagging behind the national level. When they talked about it in the House and Senate, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Moving to Mr. Mobley, the question is, knowing the state of the current educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland II to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
I think we should do away with the paperwork for the teachers. They have to do the test. And of course, align the salary structure fair. I also think that it's important to acknowledge that teachers' salaries compared to superintendent salaries are out of whack. And there must be some parity with that issue.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Moody, question is, knowing that we continue to be in an educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland II to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Well, this was covered some in my first question that I answered, but I want to echo a little bit of what Dr. Holmes said a few minutes ago. I think you have to start at the beginning. I think when you look at the percentage of college graduates that are coming into the education industry, I think we need to really research some of these states and programs that are offering tuition assistance for students that are entering education. And then in exchange for years of service in Richland 2 School District. And research what some of these other counties and districts are doing to pull college students into the education. Then once they're in, I believe, like I spoke earlier, you have to create value. You have to create time for our teachers to be able to make things manageable. You need to define duties that they have instead of everything that pops up stacking something else on top of them. This stuff wears on our teachers over time. At 28 years, you heard Dr. Holmes say there's no incentive afterwards. We used to have the Terry system. The Terry system used to provide, you could, once you hit 28 years, you could start to collect your retirement and continue to teach. You can't do that anymore. And so there is no incentive past 28 years, and we are coming up on a phase here where we have a lot of teachers that are at the 28-year mark that are looking to leave the industry. That creates chaos all the way down the line. That mentorship program that has been mentioned, I think it is incredibly important. But in order for that to be effective, we have to retain our teachers long term.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Nash, in light of the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland 2 to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Well, when I first started thinking about doing this, one of the reasons was because I had several friends who are teachers in this district, and one of my friends during the pandemic was taking on literally every possible task there was. I mean, after school, late in the afternoon, all of that, and it was wearing on them. And the question that I said was, well, why don't you talk to someone? And they said, well, who's going to listen? And that was one of the reasons why I decided to run. And looking at all of that, these teachers, we have to have a culture where they feel that they are supported, for one. I agree with what they said about the pay, but we have to have an environment where they are supported and where they're not given like every task added on to what they're doing, where they have actual breaks, where they have appreciation, but most importantly, where they can feel like they can be heard. And I said, well, what would work? Could you have a town hall? And they said, maybe, possibly, but these teachers really want to be heard. And honestly, I could tell you a million reasons what they want or what they should have, but I honestly think that we need to hear it from them. And we need to make space for us to hear it from them.
Thank you.
But I echo everything that everybody else said about the pay.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Porter, the question again is, knowing the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland 2 to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Before I move on to policies and things that we need to put in place, I want to go ahead and give us a kudos because we're not addressing this, and if there are student teachers out there watching, I want you to know we have specialists in every single area in education. So we have reading specialists, we have math specialists, social studies, we have all that already developed in our district. We have tech coaches at every single school. We have reading coaches, thank you to the state, at every single school. We have new teacher coaches. We have phenomenal new teacher coaches that stay with the new teachers for the first 2 years, where they're helping them and mentoring them. They're right by their side. And we also just created an incentive for middle and high for covering classes when we're stretched beyond our limits. So these things we have in place. Let's move that to the side, okay? Now, when it comes to retainment, we don't have unencumbered time in elementary school. Each of our elementary school teachers have about 45 minutes of planning when our students go to related arts. By the time you drop them off and pick them up, that leaves about 30 minutes. And then you have your 504s and IEPs and all those things that you have to attend. So the reason why that's in place is because there are other systems within the school that are not well developed, such as mental health and making sure that we have things in place so that we're not over-identifying students when that doesn't need to happen. Also, we don't have the staff. Well, we need to go ahead and talk to our state leaders. That's the role of the board. We can't micromanage our staff within our schools. We need to go ahead and talk about what the board can do outside in the community. We need to be at city council meetings. We need to be at the state and legislative reps so that we can get input from them, so that they can hear from us about our struggles and our restraints, so that we can bring in that money, so that we can use that money to support our teachers and all of the things that the candidates have just said. You can't do any of that without money. So we need a seat at at the table. I don't think that we have that seat right now. I don't think that when our Teacher of the Year invites all of our candidates to go to the education conversations, not enough show up. Why is that? You know what? If they're not showing up, we need to go to their meetings. Let's get to work and stop being petty.
Moving to Mr. President. Mr. President, the question is, knowing the ongoing educator shortage crisis in this state, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland 2 to recruit and retain the very best talent to work with our students?
I think first and foremost, we need to listen to the teachers. We need to ask them what they want and put in place the policies that they suggest. We need to create an environment where they don't feel intimidated by discussing or saying what their grievances are. I spoke to multiple teachers in the last couple of weeks, and they all say the same thing. When I asked, well, why don't you say something about that? They said, well, not only who will listen, they're afraid to speak because they assume that they will be retaliated against. That should not be the case. It should be automatic that they feel free to express themselves and to share ideas. But they need to be able to express themselves legitimately, and we need to honestly listen to what they say. I've listened to school board meetings. I've attended some physically, and most of the time I'm watching them. And I see where public comments and sometimes the people are talking. And no one's really taking anything that people are saying serious. It's like as if they're talking just to be talking. I even questioned last week why we have public comments when the public's comments aren't getting anything done. You know, we're acting as if they don't matter, and everybody matters. The teachers have to matter. In terms of policy, there's several policies that we could do. We could offer financial assistance for the education, reimbursement. We could provide them support. We can create a better working environment. One of the biggest issues in terms of the working environment for teachers is they said the classroom's too packed, too many people in here. We have to do something about shortening those up, lessen that amount of people in class. And then discipline. What teacher wants to go to school to be a disciplinarian in their class? And they want to have the support, knowing that when they go into their class and they have an issue with this one particular student or whatever, constantly coming in doing the same thing, that they don't keep pushing them back into class because they're afraid to expel him or do whatever they have to do to him to get that resolved. I think they need to be supported.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Ravelli, knowing that we're in an ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable Richland 2 to recruit and retain the best talent to work with students?
Okay, thank you. The first thing I would say is, teacher, it's a passion, right? To be a teacher is a passion. My daughters wanted to be a teacher, and we as parents we kind of know how difficult it is to be educating children, right? And you're not going to get rich being a teacher. So it's definitely, that's why teachers do it, because it's passionate. And I can't say that about a lot of careers. So I think the first thing is we have to, and again, I'm not an educator. I'm coming from the private and public side. So the first thing is, a board member, I'd have to understand what is the problem. You can't solve a problem you don't understand. And that comes back to communication, right? I mean, it's mentioned here many times, and it's absolutely correct. We have to be able to hear what the teacher's problems are, and we have to hear what the parents' problems are. And there has to be a very open line of communication for a board member to do his or her job. That's the first thing. And so the other thing is, again, I think we need to make it easier to become a teacher. I mean, I watched my daughter, trying to become a teacher, and she didn't necessarily go and get a teaching degree, but she loves teaching. The problem is they're expected to student teach. How do you student teach and you can't make a living? You have to make a living. So there has to be ways we bring down those hurdles. That's the first thing. I think that's imperative because there's a lot of people that want to teach, but we need to make it easier for them. The second thing is we need, or the other thing is let our teachers teach. I think that's got to be a problem, is our teachers aren't able to teach anymore. It's become maybe too standardized, and we just need to make it so that they can teach again, because I think that's what the passion is. And finally, let's get them some help. My wife is a prime example. She's been at home. She's working now, but for 30 years or so, she was home. She would have loved to go to school and help. But how many of those parents are out there? So I'll end that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Smalls, in light of the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary for Richland 2 to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
First of all, I think I'm in a fairly unique situation. I've been in banking finance for 20 years. A lot of the teachers, administrators, bus drivers, I do business with them on a daily basis. They come to me for financial counsel, and along with addressing their immediate needs financially, they tell me bluntly, directly, the challenges that they face in the district, the difficulties that they face in the district regarding their ability to do their job, to maintain their job, and to be effective in their job. And one of the things that I have been very passionate about and really kind of stirred me to start this, you could say, journey, is because I've been hearing this for 20 years. I didn't just start listening to teachers. I've been listening to teachers when they started coming in my office and sharing with me their concerns. So one of the things that I think I hear a lot of is reduce the burden. Teachers are not disciplinarians, they're not sociologists, they're not psychologists, they're teachers. And just like this gentleman rightly said, they have a passion to teach. Not everyone has that passion. And I think we squash that passion when we overwhelm them with so many responsibilities that they can't focus on the main thing, and that is to teach and educate our kids. The second thing is to provide compensation for them, for supplies. This is another thing that I hear. What is the purpose of increasing their salary by 10%, but the cost of purchasing supplies for their classroom is going up 20%? Kind of a futile effort in increasing their pay. That's critically important. Encourage tenured teachers to stay. This has been said by many others. I can't tell you how many teachers who I speak with that says, Larry, I'm at retirement age, I'm getting out. Sometimes I play with them, please stay another year. Absolutely not. Because of the challenges and the burdens that they're facing as tenured teachers and that their voices are not being heard. And finally, all this ties up with communication. Communication is critically important.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Staley, in light of the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe are necessary to enable this district to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Okay. Again, I'm one of those guys that had a great success in recruiting and retention because they were soldiers. But we flip this. You don't have to be a soldier. What you have to do is you have to look at a number of things. Recruit and retain. What are some of the great features and benefits that we can allow or increase for these teachers? For them to be able to say, hey, I think I want to stay. Look, restructure your features and your benefits, number one. The other is look at the different skill levels of our teachers. There's something called GAT, G-A-T, Global Assessment Tools. What this allows you as an individual, you can go on and take this test. What it does, it identifies your character strengths. There's 26, if I'm not mistaken. I've done it a number of times. It tells me my primary 6 strong characteristics of me. And with those 6, and if you take the test, your 6 will be totally different than mine because of your experience, your background, and your desires. Maybe we need to reclass some of these teachers. Maybe some of these teachers need a chance to change some of what they're teaching. So the reclass is not a bad thing either because they're still in the system, but they're doing something they like. I'm just throwing this out and to open up the minds and let everybody think about this for a minute. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Trapp, in light of the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe the district needs to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Like I mentioned earlier, for the last year or so, anytime I meet a teacher, they tell me exactly what's on their mind. As soon as they know you're running for school board, they want to tell you exactly what they want to see happen. And the one thing I've noticed with everyone that spoke to me, and I've heard it here for some other people tonight, so it's evidently happening, is that there's just an environment that is not very welcoming in a lot of our schools right now. Teachers are afraid to say what's on their mind. They're afraid to share things with people because they're afraid of retaliation. And you just can't have that's a very toxic environment to work in. In my opinion, as a businessman, the first thing that normally matters when you're talking about a job is money. But money isn't everything. How many of us have a job and we left a job because it was an unpleasant job? You've got to have an environment where you're comfortable, where you feel like you're valued, and money certainly comes in there afterwards. But money isn't everything. However, money does make a lot of unpleasant things bearable. So I really think that in the end, I think money has to be one of the top considerations, but certainly environment. I will tell you one thing. I know I do a small amount of substitute teaching a little bit last year because I wanted to get into classrooms and see some things. And the first time I subbed was for a half a day and an afternoon, and I had planned to just do that. I had work planned on the next day. Well, that afternoon, the kids weren't going to have a teacher the next day. They were looking for a sub. And when I got ready to leave, they all, come back. Well, I hadn't planned to come back, but went home and I called my wife and said, you know, these kids really got through to me. I want to move my work tomorrow and go in and spend the whole day with them the next day. I did that, and it was just such a rewarding experience. I have no doubt if we will make the environment these teachers are working in a little more pleasant, help them out with the things that matter to them, and get them the money they deserve, that we won't have a problem, or as much of a problem with shortages. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last for this round of questions, Ms. Washington, in light of the ongoing educator shortage crisis, what policies do you believe the district needs to enact to recruit and retain the best talent to work with our students?
Well, I have one simple answer, and it is to let the teachers teach. And what do I mean by that is we cannot have initiative overload and expect teachers to be thriving in their classrooms. And so less of implementing initiatives that come from looking at so much data, because we're a data-informed district. And when you're overwhelmed with all of the different test scores and all of the different assessments and all of the different initiatives, that begins to actually impact the ecosystem at a school. And so you heard earlier a former teacher say they have to go to this meeting and they have to show up for that, and so their planning period is diminished. And what ends up happening is your bag is packed to go home to grade papers. And how do I know that? Because I was a former classroom teacher. And so because we have teachers who are taking work home, they're spending less time with their family, less time to be active in the community, to be a voice for the school district, because it's not only left up to us as board members, but it's also left up to create a cultivating environment where we are pushing teachers to advocate. 10,000 teachers went to the State House, and it wasn't just because of teacher pay, but it was also because of better working conditions. We need professional development and personal development. There are soft skills that people may be lacking that they need help with in terms of how do you better communicate with parents? How do you better communicate with stakeholders? We need working conditions so that teachers feel safe, seen, and supported. And yes, we need a seat at the table. So what does that mean? It means we partner with the people at the State Department of Education, as well as our lawmakers, that we're talking to business owners like myself about what is it that we need to do to make sure the entire ecosystem for our teachers is thriving and that they feel supported so that they can do their jobs.
Thank you very much. That concludes our second round of questions. I'm now going to ask Ms. Perkins to once again draw a name out. Thank you very much. And this time we'll start with Mr. Staley. And then work to the left. So Mr. Staley, your question will be, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools? One more time for everyone, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools? Mr. Staley, first to you for this round of question.
Yes, diversity is critical. It's very important. And I say that because I have had the opportunity to work with different nations in nation building. I've also had an opportunity to work with our allied partners in Washington, D.C. During different operations. Now, when we look back and think about our community, a community is not just a building. A community is not a street. A community is your neighbor. When I say your neighbor, it's that individual who lives next door. It's not looking over the fence and waving every morning when he puts his trash out. It's not riding down the road and looking at someone else's home. What you have to do is you have to physically get out, walk up, touch, shake hands, meet and greet that individual. Diversity is taking yourself out of your comfort zone. And it doesn't mean that you have to get totally wild and out of control. But what it does, it represents and lets you feel and let the other person feel wanted. The three things I said when I started here a little bit was faith, family, and community. We have to get back to that. I don't know if some of you ever heard of a block party. That's when you went and filed a permit. You blocked off your 2 blocks, and what you did is you went out and you took out barbecue grills. You invited your whole neighborhood to have a barbecue party. Block parties no longer exist. Why? That was one of the main emphasis of community stockholders and people getting together and greeting and meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Trapp, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
In my opinion, the most important factor when you talk about diversity is the fact that every single person on this planet is unique. Every one of us has our own unique needs, our own unique skills, and the things we bring to our educational experience. I had the opportunity, gosh, it was last year, I guess, to sit down with some people at the school district. I had some questions about some things I'd read on the website, and we talked about diversity and inclusion and things like that. And it was a very good conversation. One of the things that I brought up in the course of this conversation is the fact that when I was a teenager, when I was younger than that, my father he was an alcoholic, to be quite blunt. And that affected me a lot in my educational opportunities. So grateful to say that when I was about 18 or about probably 17, he gave up alcohol completely, and it changed the entire situation in our family. My siblings had a much different experience in life than I did. They had much more wonderful experience. I think too often we talk about diversity, we tend to focus on things we can see, and we don't uncover the things that we can't see. We don't know what really goes on in someone's life. We don't know what obstacles they have to overcome. And until we are able to pry into someone's lives, look beyond what we see, and delve deep into what's going on in their lives, we don't know how we can help these people become the best people they can. I'm of the opinion that we have to treat everybody like they have the potential to be an astronaut. Just don't assume by looking at someone that they don't have potential. A lot of children, they behave poorly because they have things going on at home that are unpleasant. Just watch the news sometime, look at some of the terrible things adults do to children. We need to strive as a school board especially to make sure that the resources are there for the administration to find people and their skills and help them develop. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Washington, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
That requires us to be a voice for all. Our parents, our business owners, pretty much all stakeholders, families, teachers. Looking at the diverse learners that we have and making sure that all of our students have opportunities to be successful across the board, whether they decide to go to college or whether they decide to jump into a career. Also looking at policies, looking at what needs to be updated, what needs to be revised, and is it supporting the current culture and climate that we have in the district. Welcoming initiatives that actually support our students who have a variety of backgrounds, who come from either single homes or first college students. They would be the first college student to go into school, and things that actually matter to families and not things that actually will make be a check mark or make us look great, but things that we're actually doing to support families at all levels. And then educating the community. How are we educating the community about the variety of students and the initiatives that we have to support diversity and including of all students? That means that we have to bring, and I'll say it all the time, but it means that we have to bring business owners to the table. We have to look at what the state is offering in terms of support for the diversity that we have in our district. And then looking at our current community, there are so many things that are happening that many people don't know and understand. Homeless populations, we have businesses that are closing. All of this impacts the growth and development of our school district. And so we have to be having these conversations and being open to bring everybody that needs to be at the table to talk about these things so that we can partner with one another in order to move the school district forward.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Wright, the question is, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Well, first of all, I think we need to celebrate the diversity, because diversity is a component that makes our district better, because we're able to see the value in someone who may be different, maybe eats something, food that's a little different than what I eat, or maybe worships a little differently than I do. Just because something is different doesn't make it bad. So that's something we need to impress upon all of our school communities, that every child deserves an equitable and appropriate education. We need to make sure that our children are feeling valued and nurtured in their schools. We need to look at some of the restorative justice programs that have gone a long, long way in improving school climate so that students feel welcome and feel valued. Those restorative justice programs have also been instrumental in cutting down the number of suspensions as well. So we keep our children in school where they're learning. We also make sure that we're addressing their emotional and behavioral needs as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to the other end of the table, Dr. Holmes, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Okay, there are several factors here. The first one would be to continue the Office of Diversity because they represent the whole diverse community in Richland School District 2. The second one would be make sure that all types of students are represented in the classroom. Their cultural is represented in the classroom. And that's inclusive of everyone's history. We're in a situation where some people want to water down history. There is a difference between cultural competency and critical race theory. No K-12 school teaches critical race theory, but we do teach cultural competency. So we have to make sure that everyone's culture is represented. Also, there should be an acceptance. I'm just going to put this on the table because it's going around in the community. There should be an acceptance of all children. LGBTQ students should be accepted. Minorities' history should be accepted, because we are a diverse community. I attended this school, Spring Valley High School, when it was mostly Caucasian. And now the diversity of this community has changed. So we have to make sure that we are being inclusive of everyone and that we're teaching everyone's culture. We have to make sure that we do not have children who are different, making them want to run back like they used to in the old days and want to commit suicide and do things like that because we're not accepting them. You are entitled to your own personal beliefs. I have my own personal beliefs. But when I step into a public school, and I am a public school employee, a public school teacher, a public school board member, I represent the 28,000 students that go to this school regardless of their differences. And if you can't do that, then a public school is not where you need to be. A public school is just that. It is a school where everyone's culture is accepted. I'm going to always speak on that. I don't care what your personal is. That's fine. But if you're going to represent children, and I mean all children, then you need to do it fairly. Thank you.
Moving on to Mr. Mobley. The question again is, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Schools should not be a place where any race of people feel that they are being singled out for a political agenda. It's best that schools stay focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic. As one of 7 board members, I look forward to working with my colleagues and being a listening voice for parents, teachers, administrators, state officials, and taxpayers.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Moody. Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
I believe this is one of the topics where my background as a coach kind of comes into play. So for 25 years, I coached men and women. I coached athletes from all different backgrounds, different races, different religions, different countries, different cultures. But the one factor remained in that we were all moving towards one goal. And so as their coach, I had to create an environment, and I had to make everyone feel their purpose and find their purpose in that group to move forward to that goal. And so the way we did that as a coaching staff was to pour into each individual athlete as much as possible. Now, as a board, can you pour into each individual student? No, but you can get to know your students. You can get to know the teachers in your district. You can get to know what is important to them. You can get to know where they find their purpose and their intentionality, and you can pour into that. You do that by listening. You listen to what the teachers have to say. You listen to what your students have to say. You do that by being involved. You do that by supporting them. You do that by building relationships. I would spend hours in meetings with my athletes talking just about life. It had absolutely nothing to do with athletics. We talked about life. We talked about how their day went. And when they felt valued as a person, they performed at a higher level as an athlete. The people sitting on this stage right now, this is a diverse group. We may come from different backgrounds, but ultimately the goal here is the same, and that is creating the best possible educational environment for our students. We may want to get there different directions, but as a group and as a board, we have to move forward to do that. And I think my background as a coach definitely plays into how I would be able to work into that environment.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Nash. Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Well, I think there's so many facets to that, but as it pertains to just as a whole, I think we as a board, if we become board members, have to set an example. And that means we have to respect when we disagree, respect that other people have other opinions than we do. And I have a mentor who tells a story about what his grandfather used to say: if everybody's thinking the same thing, then somebody's not thinking. And I think that from that, we get to learn more and more about each other. And I think that's really where we have to start. But when diversity becomes where we are dividing ourselves, I have a mentor for students, and white students, black students, you name it, from every different background you possibly can imagine. But at this point, they are afraid to speak to one another. And that's not how it should be. And we have to support an environment where we are definitely, like the coach said, moving toward we are all going for the same goal. I think that one of the things, and if I have time, hopefully I'm going to be able to finish this. One of the things that I have always thought is, I feel that when we talk about what we have in our school as far as cultural history and things of that nature, I think there are a lot of things that are left out, but I also think there are a lot of things that we focus on more than others. And when we really should be focusing on the accomplishments and allow children to decide and say, wow, I didn't know that culture did that, and not focus on just the things that are horrible in our society, that have been in our society, as we are all changing and growing, then we will never get anywhere. But diversity should never end in division. It should always be about reconciliation.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Porter. Just as a quick reminder, we ask the audience please refrain from anything that expresses support or non-support for a candidate. Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
How can board members support this? We need to look at, one, something that we already have, which is a diversity and inclusion officer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. There's been a lot of critique about this position. As a former teacher, I wasn't aware of the extent of that role and what it did. But once I left the classroom and began having the opportunity to be more involved with our board meetings, I was able to see and hear more about what that area and what that position was able to do. Now, teachers should not be wondering what someone does in our district, okay? So what we need to do is make sure if we have critique of this position, offer suggestions of what they can do to make it better. It's not, oh, we don't see what they're doing, let's go ahead and get rid of it. No. If we see that there's a program that we have that we know will benefit us, this is a huge benefit to make sure that we acknowledge all students. We represent all students. Let's go ahead and bring teachers in and bring committees in place where we can go ahead and adjust what's going wrong with this position, if there's something going wrong. But right now, we don't know enough. Let's go ahead and create standing committees and not ad hoc committees amongst the board. We can divide our talents and work together collaboratively, and so that we are meeting the needs of all of these diverse pockets, including our disabled and special needs students with awareness programs. I worked at Pontiac Elementary at one point in time, and one of the days, you have your different celebrations, we had this one day, and the name escapes me, I'm sorry guys, but it was where we brought in community resources to address awareness with special needs students, to teach students at a young age about acceptance and how they're supposed to react when they're in front of students who are disabled or have special needs. That's something that I think should be cohesive and across our entire district. And I could go on, but I have to stop.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. President, the question is, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
First and foremost, I think board members need to see the value in diversity. Oftentimes when we use the word diversity, there's a segment of people who assume that it means anti-me or against me, and that's not what it means. To be diverse is to embrace another group or another organization or another people, and to accept them for who they are and to see value in their experiences. It doesn't negate your experiences or anyone else's. It just says we value this experience and we want to learn it. The purpose of school is to educate. The purpose of students being in school is to be educated in all areas, not just some things. So if we limit what they can be educated on, then we create sort of a vacuum for ignorance to continue to stay. And that's not the purpose of school. Schools are to learn. And so the students need to have that diversity. Diversity helps. It actually it gives us a more rich environment. It's more a cultured environment. Our students become more of a union and more of a unit than to be separated. In a diverse church, I pastor a church, and in a diverse setting, I don't want to just see a certain group in the church. I want to see everyone. The whole purpose of what I do is to bring people together, not one group of people, but all people. And so we already live in a diverse society. It is diverse, regardless of what we feel about it. It is. And so it should be reflective in the school. It should be reflected in the education department and what we teach our children. It's not less than your experience to embrace mine.
Thank you very much. Moving to Mr. Ravelli, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Okay. I might take a little bit a harsher take on this, but the first thing is compassion. Any career, schools, outside of schools, we work with a lot of different people. I work with men, women, I work with blacks, I work with whites, Asians, Hispanics, gay and straight people. Just show compassion. That's the first thing, right? But What I don't want to see, and I'm seeing it, unfortunately, in Richland too, is I'm seeing our kids being separated into groups. I don't like that. We should be focusing on their similarities, not their differences. That's very, very important. And second of all, how does a teacher teach? What they're teaching is a subject matter. If they're supposed to be teaching to all these different groups in all these different cultures or whatever, how do they do that? How can you do that as a teacher? You need to focus on the subject matter. And I don't want ideology getting into our schools. And I think it's in here already. And one of the first things I am going to do if I get to be on that board is I'm going to find out what this culturally relevant teaching is. I want to understand it. And I want to dig deep. Because if it's infecting our kids, it needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last for this round of questions, Mr. Smalls, Richland 2 is a diverse community. In your opinion, how can board members both support and enhance the experience of diverse learners, educators, and families in our schools?
Well, the first thing we need to do is just do like we've always done for many years. Just let it happen. The focus of the district is to manage and facilitate, not determine a formula regarding diversity percentages. When you have a relationship with someone, it's based on two individuals coming together. There is not an administrative guide telling you who you should not be hanging out with, addressing. Let me give you an example. When my daughter goes out to play on the playground, she's not determining who she plays with based on a ratio of black kids out there, white kids, male or female. She just plays with somebody who's out there that's willing to play with her. So I think one of the things that we do as a district from time to time is that we try to enforce these percentages instead of just letting it happen. The relationships you have, many of you didn't look at the color or culture or sex. The person just gave you a warm smile, y'all engaged, y'all built a relationship. You don't need a district to tell anyone, especially our kids, who they are, they should hang with. Let it just happen. We enhance it by removing barriers. And I think sometimes when you separate kids, well, you have the blacks, you have the whites, you have all of these different groups. The most important thing in any relationship is knowing the individual. I don't care about their color or their culture. I just care about knowing the individual. And that's the most important thing regarding seeing the value as people, as an individual, not looking at exterior things, not looking at peripheral things. And I think one of the biggest detriments that we see, and this is why we have winners and losers in our districts, is because we are trying to enforce this percentage. Let it happen. I believe that if something that we've been doing for many, many millennia regarding established relationships has been effective then, it'll be effective now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our third round of questions. I'll ask Ms. Perkins once again to draw out a name to kick off our last question. So, Mr. President, you will kick off our last round of questions. This final question is geared toward the fact that each of you are running for a position on an elected board, not an individual office. So with that in mind, the question first to Mr. President is, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole? So again, the question is, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole? Mr. President.
Thank you. I think the overall skill with respect to the board, and particularly this board, is emotional intelligence. I have a unique ability to not take anything personal and to be able to handle interpersonal relationships. And so I can get along with people. It's not, if a person disagrees with me, that doesn't cause me to be disagreeable. I possess a very good listening skill. I listen attentively. I don't listen to respond, I listen to understand. And so when I'm talking to board members or I'm talking to the people who are involved, students, teachers, parents, I'm listening to really understand what it is that they need and what it is that they want. I take responsibility and accountability for my own actions. I'm transparent. I've been pastoring for 21 years in a place that most preachers didn't even get 3 years. But because of my ability to be transparent and be authentic to who I say I am, I'm the same guy you met 15 years ago. I'm going to be the same guy today. And I'm not going to tell you anything that I'm not going to do. I work good among people because I value them. I value their opinions. Whether I agree with them or not, I do value them, and I let them know that. The goal is to work together. The only thing that matters here is the kids. That's the first and most important thing. That's what matters. And everything we do, every decision we make, has to line up with how does it affect the kids, even from the teacher standpoint. Blessing them, being able to make sure that they can get and do everything they need to do, lines right back up with the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving to Mr. Ravelli. If elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Okay, thank you. First of all is civility. I mean, definitely the board needs some civility and professionalism. I've been in public and private industry for 37 years. I have been around a lot of boards working for pension funds, and I've been around some good boards. Probably most of them have been very well-functioning boards. But I've seen the one here at the beginning that wasn't so functioning, and that got changed. And so I've seen both. And I'm also on a board myself. I think I mentioned in there that I play baseball. I'm also on the board of an adult baseball league. So, again, we have to work together. Civility, professionalism. When you disagree, you just need to disagree and do it in a respectful way, right? And we are going to disagree. There's no question about that. And I think, we talked about diversity in the previous question, and having a diverse board is important. For example, having all board members coming from education you get a lot of groupthink, right? They come from the same place. You don't want that, right? You want people from public and private industry to come in with the way they think that things maybe should be run, and you can work together as a team. First of all, as a board member, you are one of 7. So I may have lots of things that I'd like to accomplish, but I have 6 other people I have to get on my side in order to accomplish that. So you have to do it in a civil and respectful way. You can't tick people off and expect that they're going to do it, and go in the direction you want. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Smalls. If elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Well, because I've been in banking finance for 20 years, there are several things. One is financial integrity. When you're dealing with finances, there are a lot of policy and procedures that needs to be abided by in order for us to be a soluble financial institution. So financial integrity is very important because we're managing the taxpayers' money. 2, listening with the intent to serve. I'm not coming on this board just to be a lord over. I'm coming as a servant leader. In order for me to be more effective in hearing not only what you're saying, but executing your request, I have to be a good listener and provide you with options and counsel and know that I'm seeking out your best interest. 3rd, accountability. As a steward, again, you're dealing with finances. I must give an account for every penny that I deal with. That's critically important because whenever we're looking at books, whenever we're looking at the budget, everything must balance. 3rd, problem solving. How many people get upset when someone mismanages your money? That's a very sensitive topic, and that's a very sensitive issue because that's dealing with your livelihood. That's very important to me, and I understand that being in this industry for many years, I'm addressed with many problems. And I have to come up with solutions, satisfactory solutions, so that those problems can be solved. And finally, trust, establishing trust. When you're committing your time, your money, and your personal information to me, you better trust me. And I think over the 20 years I've been serving in this capacity, I've established lasting relationships by building trust with some of you that are out in this audience. So I think it's critically important regarding myself or anyone that when we're managing funds that belongs to the taxpayer, we have to make sure that we're being transparent and trustworthy and faithful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Staley, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Absolutely. What I can contribute, first of all, my KSA, which is my knowledge, skills, and ability, are vast. Over 28 years leading soldiers in the military. The first thing I looked at was leadership. Well, what about those leadership skills? Well, I have extensive background in administrative, strategic planning, where I've done that at the strategic level and at the local level, because I did run I was an executive director for an after-school program. Problem solving. Under problem solving, I use those critical skill thinkings. I'm also certified as MRT, Master Resilience Training through Fort Jackson. In decision making, in the area of decision making, I've worked with critical problems and come up with some type of course of action based upon the criteria and worked out the mathematical formula for making those decisions. So I'm just with quite a bit of extensive background, and I'm trying to go through my mind thinking about all the things I've been involved with at so many different levels. It's very hard just to single out one. But if I had to talk about one in particular, it would be that About Face program in 2004 and 2009, dealing with high-risk students that were given up, and I took them on an after-school program. We took on, in a period of 5 years, over 700 students. And not just did that program become the #1 program in the state of South Carolina, we were told it was #1 program nationally. The reason I had to leave is because I was called back to Washington. And so I left the program with another individual who took over from myself and my wife. But the About Face program was probably the most successful program, as far as I was told, in the state of South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Trapp, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
One of the things I do is I repair things, I fix things. My mind is constantly thinking in a diagnostic state on how to make things work. Usually I'm the logistics guy in any group that I'm doing something with, because I just know how to fix everything except a cat. But anyway. I have no doubt that, like for example, I've been in our schools working. I see a lot of things up in the ceilings and things that need to be repaired, but we don't do a lot about it. We just wait until it becomes an issue. There's a lot of things like that needs attention. I believe I could bring some of those things to the attention of administration. I'm at a point now in my life where I have time to focus on things like this. I have a career of 35 years. I'm able to pick and choose a lot of the jobs I do, and that gives me the opportunity to take time off and give that time to the school district to do things like attend board meetings and all the things that a board member will need to do. Years ago, a friend of mine, I did a lot of volunteer work with our church, behind the scenes stuff. She told me one time, she said, because all these people get kudos for doing stuff, and I'm the guy that don't really get any attention. And she said, hey, you need to feel good about what you do. You're the glue that holds all this together. And that's what I believe. I believe every organization, every board, every body that makes decisions needs at least one person on the board that knows how things work, knows how things tick, and knows how to incorporate that into the decisions you make. Lastly, I'd just like to say that I listen to everybody that cares to speak. I learned a long time ago that while I consider myself intelligent, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And if we listen to other people, we can incorporate what they say into decisions we make, because everybody has good ideas. And I believe that I could bring that as well as civility to the board. I get along with everybody, and I think that's important on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Ms. Washington, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
So as a business owner and an educator, that means that I know how to network, to collaborate, to partner with others, and to lead effectively. Collaboration is going to be key because we have to be able to work well with others with the skill set that we bring to the table in order to enhance the operations of the school district and the board. Then we have to have integrity. That means that we uphold values at all times, standards, and we tell the truth at all times. Even when we're wrong, we do what we need to do to make it right. And we're accountable. We're accountable to all of those that we serve, all of our stakeholders, our taxpayers, our business owner, our business community, our partners who partner with the district, our teachers, our leaders. And we're transparent about what we're communicating and how we're communicating. We advocate for everybody, no matter what level and no matter what they bring to the table. And then we also demonstrate that by collectively working together in order to be a voice for those that matter at heart. It means that we have to have tough conversations, and it's okay to have tough conversations as long as we agree to disagree and we don't allow our diversity to divide us, as it was said earlier. We want to talk to people because people need to be heard. They need to be in an environment where they feel that their voice, it matters. Why does it matter? Because they are part of this vast community in Richland too. And so what do I bring to the table? Accountable conversations. That means we have to talk to people and they may not like what we have to say, but it means that we still extend our hand across the table to say that you are a part of this community and what you bring to the community, whether you're a parent, a student, a teacher, a business owner, or a partner, that you are a part of the economic growth and development of the Richland 2 community as well.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Wright, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Well, the skills that I possess are skills that allow me to work well with others. It also gives me the ability to negotiate with others as well to come to a decision that's mutually beneficial to both of us. And I'll give you an example of, I mentioned earlier that I sit on the board of two other organizations. One is More Justice. More Justice stands for Midlands Organized Response for Equity and Justice, and we petition elected officials to implement just and fair policies. And so one of the things that comes to mind was the negotiation we had with Richland County Sheriff Lott and the Chief of Police, Chief Holbrook. We wanted them to train their officers in crisis intervention training. And that was important because we found that people in our community, if they were undergoing a mental health crisis, oftentimes they ended up getting arrested and sent to jail. So we were able to get the sheriff and the chief of police to agree to train all of their officers in crisis intervention training. I will bring those skills with me to the Richland 2 School Board and make sure that we're looking at what is in the best interest of the children of our district, not what's in the best interest for me or what my hidden agenda is, but making sure that we're putting the best forward for our children. So that's one of the things that I feel like I'm good at, working well with others, and I have the ability to negotiate and get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to the other end of the table with Dr. Holmes, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Okay, as a former administrator and current board member, I bring to the table the fact that it is important to talk to all your stakeholders and your parents. Then secondly, have honest conversation. Be honest about what you can and cannot do. There's no need for me to tell you things that we can do and we know we can't do them. So honest conversation has to be on the table to get real solutions. Then once you have those honest conversations and you tell people what you can and cannot do, then you go to work. Then what we've done as a board this past year, myself and a few others, we've attended the legislative meetings. We've attended the county council meetings. We've made partnerships with Richland County, which got us 10 new resource officers this year. We're School District of the Year. We partnership with everyone because we understand that we can sit here all night and I'm listening and I'm sitting in a seat because when you get on this side of the board, your eyes are a little different because you realize what you actually can and cannot do. But one thing I promise you is I'm going to always be honest about what we can do. I'm going to always seek solutions. I'm going to always seek outside help, just like we got those 10 officers, just like we got partnerships with several colleges. We've got students that are making partnerships and gaining $45,000 a year with partnerships on internships. These are the kind of things that we have to be focused on. And the last thing is, emotionally, we have to be strong emotionally. Sometimes tempers will flare, and they have flared on this board. Everyone knows that. There's no secret to that. But at the end of the day, we are mature. We're supposed to be here for children. It's not about any of that. And I promise you that we will continue to do that. Because at the end of the day, it's the kids that matter. We got to push this district forward. This is a district that I love and grew up in, and that's what we will continue to do.
Moving to Mr. Mobley, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Richland 2 has the opportunity to refocus on what we've always been known for, and that's excellence in education. I want us as a board and school to focus on the things that make our district regain and maintain that sense of excellence. Return the power of teaching back to the classroom. Give teachers who we hire the ability to do their jobs so that the board can have good sound data that enlightens us where gaps in learning are and how we address those gaps and what resources are needed.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Moody, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
I believe I'm going to borrow a characteristic that I think Mr. Smalls used down there, and that's servant leader. I believe that two aspects of being a servant leader, you've got to have respect for your fellow man. You have to treat those people sitting across the table with you with respect and give them the same voice that you expect to have in that room. With that, you also have to enter into a position like this with the board with humility. I can tell you straight up, and you can ask my wife for confirmation, I'm oftentimes wrong. The decision I come to the first time is usually not the best one. It needs to be sharpened. For years as a coach, when I would make a decision, I would invite my coaches to pick it apart. I would invite my coaches to ask questions. If they're asking me questions and they want to know why I made a decision that I did, what's that going to make me do? It's going to make me evaluate my answer and my decision to make sure it was the right one. If they're critiquing it, I'm going to go back to that decision and I'm going to look at it and go, you know what? They might be right on this. I might need to change this. And so either way, I'm either going to have to sharpen that policy or that decision that I made, and I'm going to have to defend that, or I'm going to have to evolve that policy because hey, maybe they're right. And so I think when you move into a position like this, you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to bring new ideas to the table. As a coach, I was kind of known as being a strategist. As a financial advisor now, I'm known as being a strategist. You give me a problem, one of my favorite things to do is to figure that out. What's the path? How are we going to do this? Let's make this happen. We can't do it this way? Okay, well, let's get creative and do it this way. So I think there are certain things that I do bring to the board that are unique, and I look forward to those challenges.
Thank you very much. Moving to Ms. Nash, if elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Well, it's kind of a joke, but I was going to say I'm a realtor, but with that comes a lot of responsibility. And if you've ever purchased a home, then you know that part of it is building relationships, but there's also the part that you may not see. We're juggling 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9 relationships at a time. And oddly enough, this year I am in the top 100 for one of the most prestigious firms in Columbia in South Carolina, and I could not have done that and run this aggressive campaign without having teamwork for a good team, but also being able to understand systems and strategy. I've also served on several boards and for FCA is one currently that I'm serving on. So I have an understanding of students and where they are, but I've also been a mentor to young adults when they leave. And so when they leave, when they're not sure where they want to go because they haven't felt that they've gotten the direction that they need, I've been able to help them do that. But also, I've served on many boards where, and served as a subprime on a community board and on an office where we basically went to help do things in the community to get, for things like the bus transit system, if you've ever familiar with the penny tax and DOT, all of those things. And I could not have done that if I didn't have great relationships, not just with the people that I work with, but also legislative bodies, because that's what it takes to get things done, like they've said here. But I think more importantly, I'm authentic. You're not going to see me be anything but that. But I'm also honest, and I have to tell honest truths. And I try to do that with love. And that's the most important thing, is that we can have disagreements, but we have to do it in love. And that's what you're going to see from me. And you're going to see the dedication that I give to everything that I've ever done in my entire life. And one of the things that my family will tell you, my friends, my husband, if you don't want it fixed, then don't call Angie.
Finally, moving to Ms. Porter. If elected, what skills do you have and what steps will you take to contribute to the effective operation of the board as a whole?
Okay. I'm going to go fast through my skills so that I can tell you about my steps. So I'm a certified educator. I'm Read to Succeed certified, and I have a master's degree in educational leadership. I was also chosen to be a leader in our SOAR program and the administrator for one summer. I was also chosen to be a teacher leader in every school that I worked at. I was a technology and learning coach. I was a Shark Tank winner for bringing innovative ideas to our district. And then also I have a nonpartisan mindset. If you haven't read the book Power of Us, I suggest that you do. It helps so that you can understand where people are coming from. Being an empathetic person that I am, I always wonder the whys. Why do people act the way that they do, and why do they function the way that they do? And so having that mind and being understanding of others and diversity, it's a win. I have a seat at the table when it comes to educators already, and Ms. Wright over there has a seat at the table in different organizations. So that's good, right? I embrace diversity. I have a diverse family. I respect religious differences. My own family has different religious differences, and we celebrate those. Things that I want to do. I want to bring 3 committees in place. I want a teacher recruitment and finance committee that our board members serve on. We got to divide us somewhat equally. A diversity and inclusion committee that supports our diversity and inclusion position now, but we're going to add to it, right? And we're going to support our mental health initiatives and resources of the district within that committee. Community outreach is the 3rd committee that I want to go ahead and put in place. We can't rely on Patrick Kelly to talk to us about all the government and the rules at our board meetings. So I want to make sure that in case he leaves us, that we're all equipped. So we need a committee that's going to learn from Patrick Kelly and all of the context that he has already in place. So we need to go ahead and talk to him about making that happen. So those are the 3 committees that I want to put in place, and I could tell you more. Visit my website.
Thank you very much. I'm going nowhere. I have 2 daughters in school. So we are now nearing the end of our scheduled time, so we're going to turn to our closing remarks from the candidates. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their closing statement. And I'm going to ask Ms. Perkins one more time to draw out of our magic jar here so we can see who goes first. Fantastic, and thank you. And we will start with Ms. Washington. You have 60 seconds for your closing remarks.
So my reason for running for school board is because I want to be a voice for all. I want to bring transparency to our community by educating the entire Richland community on safety spending, projects, and partnerships. And that doesn't mean that we just give them information, but we help them to understand how it impacts the entire community. I want to listen to learn, to uncover truths, and to create opportunities for constant growth where we are actually building the system and not breaking the system. It's critical for our board members to restore the hope and the trust in those who we govern as a district, as the district in a whole. And we do this when we work together to make sound decisions for the betterment of our Richland 2 community, the entire community of teachers, of parents, of staff, of business owners, and those who pay taxes to how we function and grow.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wright.
Yes, if you think improving student achievement is important and keeping students and staff safe physically and mentally while they're in our school buildings, if you think it's important for each child to receive an equitable and appropriate education, then you and I are in the same boat, because those are the things that I dearly believe in as a former educator and a person who is very involved in our community. I mentioned to you earlier about the boards that I sit on and the work that I'm doing in our community. I want all of our children in Richland 2 to be able to excel at whatever level they're working at. We want to make sure that we provide them with the best possible education that we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the other end of the table with Dr. Holmes.
I want to continue for Richland School District to be the #1 district as it was rated this year. I want to continue for our superintendent to be the #1 superintendent as it was this year. I want us to continue to have an advanced ed, which is now Cognia, report that is above the national average, which it was this year. I want us to continue to have a financial report that was sound, which allows us to do things with our bond money. I want us to continue to have a legislative relationship with our legislative officials, which we did because we formulated a committee that gave legislative reports at every board meeting. I want to continue to make sure that there's diversity in this district. I want to continue to make sure that all students and all teachers and all faculty and all staff receive income increases. And those who work in the classrooms also know that they are loved, and we appreciate everything that they do. I want District 2 to continue to be what I know it can be. So that's what I would like for this district. So I'd like to continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mobley.
As a board member, I will ask in-depth questions about policy and programs so that we as a district understand the value they will bring to the classroom. I will listen to and reflect the concerns of our district and work collaboratively with fellow board members to improve our schools. Although budget season gets tougher each year, I believe we can find creative solutions to address those challenges while maintaining the superior quality of education we have come to expect. In our district, we value top education, and we are able to provide that education. However, I am committed to continued improvements and to taking our educational system to an even higher level.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
First off, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for those that are watching. I appreciate this opportunity. The Richland 2 School Board campaign and election process is a nonpartisan race. And inside this race, there are some topics that are politicized, and that in and of itself can create some division. And I refuse to buy into one side or the other. I feel like as a school board, if we're going to move forward, we have to be united, we have to be creative, and we have to be intentional about how we operate as a board and the example that we set for our teachers, other administrators, and our students. It's my hope that I have the opportunity to work as hard as I can to make that happen.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Nash.
Well, thank you guys for being here tonight. It's been great to see all of you guys here, and it's always just really important to see that there's so many people that care about this process. But I think that one of the things that people are asking for is progress in some way or another. It's easy to focus on the 100 reviews that are good, but we also have to focus on maybe the 20 or 25 that are not so good, because those people have a voice as well, and those people need to be heard. And so, with that being said, if you are looking for someone who is going to listen to those voices to make sure that we can get all 152 gold star reviews, in some form or fashion and that you're always heard, then I'm definitely going to be the person that you want to vote for. I don't have a lot to be able to say all the things I want to say here, but I do a fireside chat that I've been doing well before I ever decided to run on Facebook. So if you want to come over there and check it out and give your input, it's a great place for people to talk about their ideas and their thoughts, and community leaders, and I've talked to candidates. There's more candidates to be on there. So I hope you guys will check that out. But I'm Angela Nash, and thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Ms. Porter.
Yes, sir. Number one, I love this school district. I love school. It's why I left school and came back. And then I left school again, and I'm back here again, right? So I want you to know that I'm going to celebrate our accomplishments no matter what, because I have pride in our school district, and that's important. I don't need to and feel like I'm on the outskirts, because we're on this team together. Our parents, our teachers, our students, and the board. We shouldn't be fighting against these initiatives. I want to celebrate them and then look at how we can improve it. I want to respect and appreciate and listen and learn from the people that we have in place right now who've been doing this for many years. They have experience that they can contribute, but you need to listen with both ears, not one. I'm going to also make sure that I apply my experiences from the classroom into decisions that are made and encourage our board members to do the same. Thank you, Facebook/nporter for R2.
Thank you very much. Mr. President.
Again, my name is Darrell President, and President is my last name. And I really appreciate the opportunity that I was received tonight to share with you some of my ideas, some of my goals, some of my initiatives, some of my interests, and I believe and feel that we have like interests. It is our desire that everything that we do is about the children, and that's at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, to benefit and to educate our youth, and to make sure that our staff, our teachers, are safe, secure, and supportive. And that's the big issue. Do they feel that way? And I believe that I can bring a unique perspective, a fresh perspective, a great set of eyes, a great of ears, be able to listen to all the concerns and to address those concerns. I hope and pray that you would take the time to visit my website. It's president4richland2.com and see everything that we're trying to do, and contact us. You can talk to me directly. I will be accessible. As a board member, I will be accessible.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ravelli.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say the same thing that Ms. Nash did. I want to thank all of you for coming out today and taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know they are busy schedules, to come out here and listen to all of us. So I just want to say that first. Second, I want to talk about my website, so you can go there, because I've put together a website with videos, and I'm putting some other ones that will be coming out pretty soon. I'm not very original, so it's ericravelli.com. It's very simple. Pretty much everything is Eric Ravelli something. I want to bring my 37 years of experience in accounting, investment management, and portfolio management to the board. I've learned a lot in those years, and I feel like I can be a real asset for the board and for the district. And finally, I did mention passion in one of my responses. I'm also very passionate about providing a top-tier education to the children of Richland too. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smalls.
Again, I would like to thank all of you for taking time out to come out and to really hear my heart. It's always an honor and privilege to speak with such a great group of people who see the times that we're in right now regarding our school districts. And one of the things I would like to say to all of you again is thank you. And I also wanted to share with you basically one of the main reasons why I'm here. One, my desire is to educate our kids. I think in order for something to function and operate according to its design or fulfill its purpose, it must carry out its purpose. And when we find ourselves indoctrinating instead of educating our kids, we're majoring in the minors, and we are not facilitating the necessary steps that is needed in order to educate our kids properly. And finally, is to serve. The major purpose of my role in the financial industry is to serve the membership. And that's what I bring to this district, service.
Thank you very much. Mr. Staley.
Yes, again, I just give honor to God being able to be here. Again, 28 years in the military, it has not always been I'm sitting in this position. I've had friends that did not make it. And because of that, and looking back and realizing the priority of what your loyalties, your ethics, your morals, things that you have to live by and be honored with. I took an oath to serve this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I feel I can do the same thing with our safety of our children, the safety of our teachers, and the safety of the staff and the community. I will work very close with the law enforcement because I do have credentials, and I will make sure, with all my knowledge and skills and abilities, I will make this community and this district as safe as I possibly can. Thank you.
And last but not least, and I believe the same individual that kicked us off, final closing statement, Mr. Trapp.
Makes you wonder, don't it? Well, anyway, first of all, let me express my gratitude to everyone here as well as those that organized this event. I've learned something here tonight, and I think that's very important because that's what we have to do as board members is we have to come together as a group, we have to share ideas, we learn, we make decisions and move forward. The one thing I would like to really press on your minds tonight is that I can assure you, if I'm elected to the board, that the children of this district will receive my precious time. They won't receive my spare time. This won't be something I do just whenever I have the opportunity. This will become the number one priority in my life. I will serve as much as I need to make sure that the needs of our children are taken care of, everything I can do as a board member. We're limited in the things we can do, but we need to do everything we can. And I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have now reached the end of the 2022 Richland 2 Teacher Forum. As we conclude, I would like to thank the candidates for participating in this conversation, as well as their willingness to serve the children of our community through running for public office. And I'd like to ask the audience, you've done a great job of holding applause, but I think it's appropriate to give these candidates a round of applause. I would also like to thank the members of the League of Women Voters for their help tonight, especially Miss Sally Hughley, who did a great job with the timekeeping duties. And thank you to the Richland 2 Teacher Forum for their efforts coordinating tonight's events, especially Forum Chair Mr. Valente Gibson and former Chair Ms. Trachania Cuffey. And we have a celebrity in the audience. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that the newly announced Richland 2 School District Teacher of the Year, Ms. Tracy Mason from Longleaf Middle School, is with us as well. And finally, I would like to thank each and every one of you for listening in to tonight's forum, whether in person or online. Northeast Richland County is fortunate to have one of the premier school districts in the United States, and maintaining that level of educational opportunity for students requires the voters of this district to make informed and thoughtful decisions in elections for school board, as well as statewide offices like governor and superintendent of education, both of which are on the ballot this November. To make sure your voice is heard in this fall's election, the first step is making sure you are registered to vote. You can check voter registration status at scvotes.gov, and if you aren't registered, you can register on that same website, but the deadline is this Sunday, October the 9th. Another great resource to help you with voter registration and information is the League of Women Voters, vote411.org. Once you are registered, don't forget the General Assembly passed a comprehensive election reform law last spring that makes it easier than ever to vote in South Carolina. This November is the first general election in state history with true no-excuse early voting, which starts on Monday, October the 24th. Under early voting, you can cast your ballot at several different locations across Richland County from 8:30 to 6 o'clock daily, October 24th through November 5th, including Saturdays. The only exception being Sunday, November 5th, polls will be closed. And of course, you can still vote on Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 8th. All Richland 2 schools and activities are closed on Election Day, so please make every effort to participate in this year's election so your voice is heard on the future direction of our community, state, and nation. Thank you again for participating, and good night.